All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It's a lovely Tuesday evening, and so glad to be here. And thank you for the 2.4K likes on TikTok. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much. I noticed some people power tapping away. Jai, thank you. It's Jai. Thank you very much, and every other person who liked the live as well. Now, again, we know that, of course, we know that today's Tuesday, so we don't come on camera. And also means that we have to almost like double the power tapping, especially on TikTok. So I want to implore us, especially those of us on TikTok, to please keep liking the live, because that's the way to keep the live alive. So keep power tapping. Let's keep sharing. Today we're discussing something quite interesting. There is a push, right? And it didn't just start today. It's been around since the 1950s, as far as Nigeria is concerned, where a group of people tried to own the narrative. Several times, people say things like, how began tribal politics? And it's something that almost everybody believes now. People even say it without thinking. And I see a people also apologizing for it. Maybe not directly saying we're sorry, but almost kowtowing, because you feel like you're trying to make up for something that Awo did wrong, and because that's the narrative that we've been force fed with, so to speak. We've been force fed. It's the thing that we've come to believe, but it's a lie. It's a lie, and I've often said that in certain parts of Nigeria, when it comes to history, to be honest, every accusation is actually a confession. People actually accuse you of what they do themselves, and they do that because they feel that once they say that and you don't have any, you will be busy looking for the mistake on you, rather than fighting them over their own issues. Because now you think it's about you, you think it's your own error, not knowing that the person talking to you is actually the one who bears that issue. And so it's something that you notice a lot in our conversations as Nigerians. When you're talking, people say, "Oh, I will do this, I will do that," and everybody begins to repeat that thing as though it's the truth, but it's not the truth. One of the things I hope to do with these sessions that we're having is to reclaim the name Owl to the point where you're not hearing me. Jesus is not. Thank you very much, Perry Zim. Thank you much, Perry Zim. Thank you. I've been speaking for a bit. I think again TikTok is just being TikTok. Mombo. Okay, 1 second. Hello. Can you hear me now? I think you should be able to hear me now. Sorry about that. I think it's TikTok acting up. Thank you very much for your support. For joining us on YouTube and on Facebook, we're glad you're here. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like the live on YouTube and on Facebook. If you're on TikTok, please power tap. Today's Tuesday. It's a lovely Tuesday evening. I hope you're having a great one as well. Because it's Tuesday, we're not going to show our face. I am not going to show my face, I should say. Because again, it's Tuesday. We don't usually come on camera on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that means that apparently we may have to even double the power tapping in order to keep the live alive, so to speak. Hello? What's it about? It's been funny, but we're good now. What is it by that? I think it's the other device. We'll find a way around it. Anyway, glad to be here. Hope everybody's having a great day. And thanks for the likes. It's Jai. Thank you very much for doing so much. I saw the notice of you power tapping, so thank you very much for liking the live. And I want to ask that others also please power tap, especially on TikTok. TikTok in order to keep the live going. If you join us on Facebook and on YouTube, thank you very much for being here. Please like the live and also share so we can have the algorithm recommending the live stream to others. Again, like I said before the mic went off, if you're on TikTok, it's Tuesday. So what it means basically is that we're not going to come on camera. And that means we need to really power tap in order to keep the live going. So please, let's power tap on TikTok. Let's share the live. And if you're on TikTok, please click on the heart icon above my image so you can either join the team or drop a heart to me, drop a gift. These things help the algorithm push the live to the FYP. So let's do it together, please. We're going to have a very great, fantastic session today. I can assure you of that. So please, let's power tap, let's share as we get into the deep end, so to speak. All right. So today we're looking at something quite interesting. The title of this session is How Azikiwe Sparked Tribal Politics in Nigeria. Now, there's something that has been in the works for more than 60 years, right? And it's a narrative that tends to demonize Awo, and by extension, Yoruba politicians. And they label Papa as the one who introduced tribalism into Nigerian politics. Now, if he did, I would be proud to say he did, but he didn't. And one of the things that I've discovered in Nigerian history, and especially if it's coming from the eastern part of Nigeria, every accusation is a confession. Especially if it's coming from the eastern part of Nigeria, every accusation is a confession. So what you're being accused of is actually what the accuser does, right? And what he's doing basically is to say you're doing what he is doing, so that you get busy with trying to sort out whatever it is that you thought you were doing, while he gets to do whatever he really wants to do. Okay, so when you hear these things about being, how brought tribalism into Nigerian politics and things like that, there's a reason for that. To be clear, it's not the truth. That's the first thing we have to make very clear. It's not the truth. But what they're actually doing is this. They say that in order to give you a burden of guilt, right? So you find yourself bearing this burden of guilt and having to either make excuses or apologize for what Awolowo supposedly did. In reality, they're only making things up in order to be able to gain incursion into your own space. Right? And I've seen it in different books. I've seen it in a book by Achebe. In what's his book? There was a country. And the funny thing is that it's the creme de la creme of their society that have perpetuated these lies, and everybody now believes it. But the sad part is, it's not just the Igbos who believe these lies. It's Yoruba people also believing it and having to now kowtow and almost, you have to tiptoe around the truth because you don't want to hurt people. Meanwhile, the person you're trying to rant about. So today, we want to set the record straight. We're going to be reading from a number of books to be able to understand what really happened and how Azikiwe introduced tribalism into Nigeria. Thought of tribalism in Nigerian politics until Zik came along, and that was long before 1951, where they say Awolowo did something. It goes all the way back to 1936, but it became really the first time he actually showed this color was in 1938. Okay, Zik had returned to Nigeria in 36, started this paper in 37, and then went full-blown tribalistic in 1938. And so some of the things that they say Awolowo did not allow Zik to his 51. Number one, it makes no sense for you to be expecting me to do things like that for you in my own region. Number two, if I have your history since 1938 doing certain things in my land, so I have 13 years of you doing certain things in Yoruba land, there's no way on earth I'm going to allow you to dominate my space. So people who go around crying and saying, you are tribalist, they are the ones who are descendants of not just tribalists, but bigots. And today we're going to get into that conversation by listening to a session we had a while back titled How Azikiwe Sparked Tribal Politics in Nigeria. It's a 3-part series, and so if you notice that I am pausing to maybe play another part is because I'm pausing to play another part. So if you notice any breaks, it should be because of that. Okay. All right. So again, please power tap. It's going to be a long one, but I hope that, as you listen, you would keep liking and sharing to make sure that the live goes on and on and on. Okay, that's about the okay. So I'm going to read the introduction. That's a description on the video. Then we'll get into the conversation. All right. Thank you very much for being here. TikTok, thanks for the 4.9k likes. Keep our tapping. Thank you. All right, let's get into this description. In 1934, the Nigerian youth movement was born as the Lagos Youth Movement. It was a beacon of hope, a gathering of minds determined to push for a united front in the fight for political progress. By 1937, Nnamdi Azikiwe had joined the movement, rallying alongside others to secure victories in the 1938 elections. Then came the swift... You know what? I'm going to start all over again, please. The little issue. In 1934, the Nigerian youth movement was born as the Lagos Youth Movement. It was a beacon of hope, a gathering of minds determined to push for a united front in the fight for political progress. By 1937, Nnamdi Azikiwe had joined the movement, rallying alongside others to secure victories in the 1938 elections. Then came the shift, when personal ambition began to outweigh the collective mission. The story of Nigerian politics took a darker turn. Azikiwe, instead of keeping the focus on unity, played a card no one else of his era had dared to touch. He injected tribalism into our political bloodstream. That moment set the tone for decades of division, mistrust, and ethnic politicking. To this day, some of the loudest voices you hear from the Southeast pointing fingers at others are often echoing their own history. In the history of certain groups, every accusation is a mirror reflecting what they have done themselves. The seeds sown back then still grow wild in our politics today, and it all started when one man chose ego over the bigger picture. Here is how Azikiwe sparks tribal politics in Nigeria, and I'm sure you're going to have a great time enjoying this. Take a listen. I said one thing you can't or you would not be able to take away would be that he was a fantastic. Like I said, one thing you can't or you would not be able to take away from Azikiwe would be that he was a fantastic orator. He could speak. He could speak. Right? He was a great speaker, and so that helped the movement. And so it says here, the Nigerian youth movement was already popular with the masses before Dr. Azikiwe's return, but he brought with him a propaganda technique which was new in politics and journalism in Nigeria, and which further boosted the popularity of the Nigerian youth movement and disarrayed its opponents. Little wonder, therefore, that in opposition to the veteran NNDP, the NYM won in 1938 and in a resounding manner all the 3 Lagos seats in the Legislative Council and all but one of the elective seats in the Lagos Town Council. Just quickly explain that as well. NYM was a youth movement, but it was beyond the youth movement. It was also a political party of some sort. So they presented candidates for elective positions in Lagos. At the time in Nigeria in the 1930s, you could only vote in 2 places, Lagos and Calabar. All right? And even then, they had all these criteria for that, which was also one of the things that NYM wanted to remove. And one of those things was that in order to vote, you had to be a property owner, and you had to be earning a particular amount of money per month and above. That was what qualified you to be able to vote. NYM was one of the organizations that moved for universal suffrage, where people could just vote regardless of being in a house in a place or not. If they were living there, that's good enough. That came much later. But in the 20s and the 30s, you had to have a house and you had to make a certain amount of money. All right. Now, NYM also presented candidates just like NNDP. But in the 1938 elections, NYM won all 3 seats in the Lagos Legislative Council, and they also won every seat in Lagos Town Council but 1. But apart from the role which he played in these 2 electoral battles, it was Dr. Azikiwe who delivered a succession of blows now subtle, then hard and heavy, but always accurate and harmful, which, aggravated by a series of bungling and mismanagement on the part of some of its leaders, brought about the fall and the ruin of the NYM. In other words, because Azikiwe had a way with words, he could deliver serious punches, right, and blows, and deal with the and deal with what's the word? Deal with even his own people. The things he did. So, in other words, the only thing we can credit Azikiwe for doing, and by the way, I'm staying with this book because there are many books that confirm these things, right? You can read Between the Ethnic and the National by Remi Adekoya. You will find all these things there as well. But I want to read just one book for this session, unless, of course, we want to buttress some points using other books. I don't want us to be distracted so much. That's why I'm reading only one book. But we're not just taking this because I said it. Other books also report the same, the same event or the same thing. In other words, the only thing that we can credit Azikiwe for doing for the NYM was the way he helped with ensuring that they won elections in 1938. And you can't take that away from him. He spoke, he did all of that and all that. Yes. However, beyond that, and this is the crazy part with talented people, the talent that he used to help them win those elections was the same talent he used to ensure the downfall of the party, of the movement. That same tool, Orenu, whether those so I've been to Kosile, the things he said, the things he wrote, they were the things eventually led. Not the only thing, of course, there was mismanagement on the part of some of the leaders of the NYM, but coupled with his own things, his own, Papa called it jabs, or called it blows, succession of blows, coupled with the mismanagement on the part of some of the leaders of NYM. Those two things eventually led to the fall and the ruin of NYM. Why did Awolowo say this? Is it just 1 second? Why did Awolowo say this? Is he just talking? No. Something happened in 1938. And what happened in 1938 was that, and I mentioned this, on Monday, Obasanjo Akíntóyè was trying to run for a seat in Lagos Town Council. But certain people were against him. And the people against him were people from his own part of Yoruba land. And they were against him because he was against their own interests as far as they were concerned. So back in the day, they wanted to be very clear that Remo were different from Ijebu people so that they could have their own sovereignty and have their own identity outside the Ijebu and Awujale. So they wanted to just be Remo. Akíntóyè was one of those people who supported the Ijebu and said, it doesn't really matter, we're all one, all those things. So when it was time for him to run in Lagos, again, this was in Lagos, the Remo people living in Lagos did not vote for him. And so he lost. So let me just read part of that and then we'll continue. Dr. Azikiwe caused many ears to prick up at the discordant notes which sounded when the campaign for the Lagos Town Council election 1938 was at its peak. Obasanjo Akíntóyè was one of the NYM candidates and the only one who lost among them. Most of the Ijebu Remo people resident in Lagos were opposed to his candidature because the Odemo had sided with Ijebu Ode when the people of Ijebu Remo had demanded separation from the latter. The Remo opponents of Oba Akíntóyè used the Nigerian Daily Times as their medium of attack. 2 or 3 letters to the editor had been published in the paper. Stay with me. This is the first thing that Azikiwe did in 1938. Again, remember the date, 1938. Why is that date important? Because you can't even understand history if you don't get the concept of timelines. Timelines help you to put things in perspective. That's one. Number 2, you also have this thing in recent times where people tell you about, this last election has destroyed Nigeria. We're never, tribal or ethnic or tribalism. It was Tinubu. It was this APC. I'm not APC, but I don't like lies. It was APC that brought it. It was Yoruba people. That's the one. I'm Yoruba, so I can speak. It was Yoruba that brought it. Guess what? Kintoko Ifa that didn't share. Somebody just wrote that. Let me read what this one wrote. It says, this bigot, who saw Nigeria as a mere geographical expression, is never mentioned. Tinubu, who said he doesn't believe in Nigeria, not mentioned. Again, this is how you have a bunch of retards who come here from time to time. Okay, and I won't even remove what you have typed for now because I want to give you this benefit of the doubt. Perhaps if you listen to me for more than 4 minutes, it's going to help you. Afraid, real quick. Afraid of what? Afraid of stupidity. Nah. If you had known, you should not have written that nonsense. But since you wrote it, let me remove it. But if you write nonsense again, I'll now mute you. Okay? Like I said, some of you, your stupidity is congenital. Like it's passed from generation to generation. So please don't bring it here. May God bless you and keep you. But don't be stupid here. All right? Anyway, let's concentrate on people that matter. We can leave it there and just play stupid until you become too much for me. Then I can send you to the naughty corner. Okay? God bless you, Junior. Where were we? The first thing we notice is what happened in 1930. Now remember, 1934 was when the Nigerian Youth Movement was formed as Lagos Youth Movement. 1936 was when the name was changed. 1937 was when Zik returned from Ghana and joined the NYM. 1937 was when Zik helped the NYM to canvass for votes, and campaign and do all of those things. And it's important to mention those things. Those were the good things that Zik did in Nigerian Youth Movement. It was very, very useful. But it was also included in the Central Executive Committee as soon as he joined. All right, that's that. Now in 1938, what happened in that election? I mean, every seat was won, but one was lost. That one, I said that 3 seats in the Lagos Legislative Council, all 3 seats were won by NYM. Then in the Lagos Town Council, all the seats in the Lagos Town Council was won, all the seats were won except one. That one seat that was lost was actually the one that Oba Samuel Akinsanya was intending to occupy. Now, Oba Akinsanya was, I've already mentioned, I want to just go back into it because it's going to help me with my thoughts since this person disturbed me earlier. Oba Samuel Akinsanya was a Yoruba man living in Lagos Island, right? Living in Lagos, but he was Remo. Now, being a Remo man, the Remo people, they wanted to Ijebu towns. So you have Ijebu Ode, of course, Ijebu Igbo, Ijebu Mushin, Odogbolu, many of those towns, Ijebu Ife, and so on and so forth. But there's another subgroup, which was now like a subgroup of the subgroup. So Ijebu is the subgroup of Yoruba people. There's another group that traced their own journey to a place called Iremo quarters in Ile-Ife. That group is called the Remo people. Those Remo people are now become like the subgroup of the Ijebu subgroup. So at some point in their history, they of course also have their own capital in Shagam, where you have their Karibo. They then said, you know what, we don't want to be a subgroup of a subgroup. We're actually a subgroup in our own right? So we're going to just be Remo. Now those Remo people that want you, people like places like Shagamu, Ilishan, Ikperu, Ikene, those are Remo towns, and so on and so forth. So they wanted to have their own, stuff. Now, at that time, the people wanted kind of separation, and what that means basically is this. The king in the capital is a king over all the towns, or is a paramount king over all the towns within that subgroup. All right? So the paramount king of Ijebu people till today is the Aujale. So if the Remo people were under the Ijebu, that means that they are also under the suzerainty of the Aujale. But they wanted to have their own, because they also have their own head, who is their Karibo, but they have many other kings. All right. So that point, they were now saying, we want to be Remo, But Samuel Akinsanya supported the Ijebu, like Ijebu should still be the capital, they should be called Ijebu, and so on and so forth. And because of that, his own people in Lagos, campaigned against him, because it was against the interests of the majority. Therefore, he lost. Now, while they were campaigning, one incident happened in the Nigerian Daily Times. There was a man, the editor, called Bates, Mr. Bates. Mr. Bates had published that people are writing about, he was publishing letters by people against the candidature of Samuel Akinsanya. And in one of those editorials, he mentioned that he has a flood of letters against Akinsanya. stay with me, please. Against the candidature of Akensanya, he talked about having a flood of letters. So when he said that, when you say a flood of letters are poured into my office about this particular person, which means a lot of people are against his candidature, which of course led to the loss eventually. But one of the leaders of NYM, Chief H.O. Davis, decided to go visit the Nigerian Daily Times office to talk to Mr. Bates. When he got to Mr. Bates, he asked him, please, can you show me this flood of letters that you have received from all over Lagos which of course you recorded, you published in your paper. You said you had received a flood of letters pouring in. So may I see the flood of letters? And, excuse me. Excuse me. So he asked for the flood of letters, and Mr. Bates, according to Papa here, was embarrassed. He had no flood of letters. He had just about 2 or 3 letters. And so it was like, this is all you had, and you're saying that the whole world is against Akensanya and all of those things. Anyway, they had this conversation, and that was it. The next day, Bates published his own paper. Now, Bates was already having a problem with Azikiwe. Why? They were rivals. Azikiwe was the editor and publisher of West African Pilot. Bates was the editor of the Nigerian Daily Times. Bates then used the opportunity that, okay, now wrote in his paper on the next day that H.O. Davis came visiting, but he didn't tell why he visited. He didn't talk about the purpose of the visit. He just talked about the fact that he visited. When the paper came out, now H.O. Davis, N.S. Zikoli, the Obasamala Akensanya that we're talking about, and Dr. Azikiwe, who owned West African Pilot, were all members of NYM, including Awolowo. Right? So H.O. Davis, being a member of NYM, essentially what Bates was doing was to use him to attack his group, like saying, even somebody from your place visited me yesterday, that kind of thing. Now, when the paper came out, H.O. Davis saw the paper and then decided to, provide a rebuttal, so to speak. So he published something in Zig's own newspaper, the West African Pilot, to talk about the purpose of his visit. Right? Not just the fact that he visited, but why he was there. But regardless of what he did, this is what happened after his own statement was published in Zig's paper. This is what Zig did. It says here, in fact, let me read just a bit. Mr. Bates, who because of his conflict with Dr. Azikiwe was an object of detestation in Nigerian circles, tried to exploit Chief H.O. Davis's visit in his own favor. He carried a news item the day after Davis's visit, simply mentioning the fact, but omitting the purpose of the visit. Chief H.O. Davis promptly explained the purpose in a statement published in the West African Pilot. Nevertheless, Dr. Azikiwe wrote an editorial in his paper in which he referred with disapprobation to this visit and described Chief H.O. Davis as a simpleton. That was his comrade. He referred to him as a simpleton. To me, this is Papa now, this is Awolowo. To me, this open abuse and rebuke of a worthy colleague and compare cut very much against the grain. It was quite out of tune with the spirit of comradeship and mutual respect, which was expected to dominate the leadership as well as the followership of the NYM. That was the first thing that he did in 1938 that made people start wondering, are you for us or against us? The next thing he did, I'll say it now. Remember I mentioned how Africanization of the civil service was a major priority for NYM? Do you remember? I'm sure you do. Anyway, the British colonial government balked. And they were like, you know what? You guys have been talking about this thing for so long. Let's do this. We're going to appoint a magistrate who is Nigerian. That name, of course, is Adetokunbo Ademola. We're going to appoint him. Since you guys want Africanization, we want Yoruba people to have, we want black people to be in the civil service, not just, white. Let's have Africans. Okay. We're going to have a new magistrate. The magistrate will be Adetokunbo Ademola. Guess what Zig did in his paper? Now, Adetokunbo Ademola was a member of NYM. NYM was the first nationalist organization. It was an organization that brought everybody together, regardless of their ethnicity or tribes. They didn't think about where they're from. They didn't think about all of those things. They just focused on the goal of one Nigeria, like we always say, number one Nigeria, one Nigeria, one Nigeria, one Africa. Anyway, a member of that group, Zik, decided to write against another member of the group. That's Ademola, saying that they should not appoint him because he didn't have the prerequisite experience. Let me read to you how it's detailed, how it's written here. It says here, at another time, Azikiwe created more than a tremor throughout the rank and file of the movement when he wrote editorials in the Pilot calling upon the government not to appoint Sir Adetokunbo and then Mr. Ademola a magistrate, as was then strongly rumored. His ground for this action was that Sir Adetokunbo had not had the statutory post-call experience. But guess what? Regardless of the fact that he used his paper to go against his own comrade, the British government still appointed Adekunbo Ademola as a magistrate. But guess what Zik did? He wrote against that again. Let me read that to you. When the appointment was in fact made, he criticized it on the same ground. This act of his was in diametric opposition to the movement's policy of Africanization of the civil service and the judiciary. In other words, you're talking to a man who doesn't really care about the goal of the organization. Let me pause to say something here. The folks who insult Azikiwe whenever I speak about the good things he did and tell us that he's a terrible person, they should cancel him and everything, are suddenly insulting me for highlighting the terrible things he did because he's Igbo. In other words, when I talk about the good that he did, they will tell me that I didn't do anything good. And the reason they say this is not because they didn't do anything good, it's because they stopped believing in Biafra. Azikiwe actually supported Biafra in the beginning before he changed his mind. So whenever I talk about the good, which I have done here by the way, whenever I talk about the good that Azikiwe has done, these people counter me by mentioning that they hate him, they don't want him, and the reason, of course, is not because he was a bad person. It's essentially because he stopped believing in Biafra. Now that I'm talking about the historical antecedents, they come here to tell you that he's such a great man. Why? Because he's Igbo. It tells you how dumb certain people are, and I'm not going to say more than that. And you guys know exactly who you are, and you have been disturbing me. You're not very smart. You're not dumb, but you're not very smart. Take your pick your choose your choice. Let's go on. By the end of August, this is a very important paragraph, by the way, I'm about to read. Again, I'm reading Awo, the autobiography of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. You can find this book on Read Me Books on Telegram. Let me pause to say something here. The folks who insult Azikiwe, let me pause to say something here. Build up the Igbos as a man. I'm going to say more than that. And you guys know exactly who you are, and you have been disturbing me. You're not very smart. You're not dumb, but you're not very smart. Take your pick your choose your choice. Let's go on. By the end of August, this is a very important paragraph, by the way, I'm about to read. Again, I'm reading Awo, the autobiography of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. You can find this book on Read Me Books on Telegram. By the way, if you get into Read Me Books, you have these sections, right? There's politics, there's history, there's Yoruba, there's Chief Obafemi Awolowo, there's children's section, there are different sections, so you can go into any one, and then you see how you can get the books in the general section as well. Thank you. Let's go back into this. So this is a very, very important portion, so please pay attention. By the end of August 1940, I was certain in my own mind that Dr. Azikiwe was not a conscientious member of the Nigerian youth movement, and that for some reasons best known to himself, he was bent on destroying this nationalist organization. At the same time, it seemed clear to me that his policy was to corrode the self-respect of the Yoruba people as a group, to build up the Igbos as a master race, to magnify his own vaunted contributions to the nationalist struggles, to dwarf and misrepresent the achievements of his contemporaries, and to discount and nullify the humble but sterling quota which older politicians had made to the country's progress. Other incidents which happened thereafter merely went to strengthen my beliefs. Is Awo right or wrong here? Why would Awo say this? This is quite strong. This is strongly worded. He's saying, number one, he's not a conscientious member of the Nigerian youth movement. Why would you say that? For obvious reasons. If you're a real serious member of a movement, you will not be going against the objectives of that same movement. If you're a true member of a movement, the movement will not say we are going this way, and then you'll be going the other way. Not just that you're going the other way on your own, no, but as you are going, you are criticizing, castigating, destroying the movement. It's exactly what some people are doing in the LP now. Before what happened last week, when the Supreme Court talked about the lady as the chairman of LP, certain people in LP were speaking against the party. It was so bad that Abure had to have a press conference a couple of weeks ago to say that if you are a member, you have to show that you're a member, because certain people were moving like you don't know where they belonged. Well, they didn't just start today. This started in the 1930s, 1938. Kubu, I see what you are typing. You want to send me something from Tesco? 1938. So the idea of, and again, every other person in Nigeria in that youth movement, they were thinking nationalistically, if there's any word like that. They were about Nigeria, they were about Africa, thanks a lot, Empress. They were about Nigeria, they were about Africa, they wanted to make things better. But then you have this person who comes on board, and the thing people start noticing is that everything the group was doing, it was diametrically opposed to those things, including the appointment of their own members as magistrates in the Nigerian judiciary. When was this? 1938. How long ago was this? In 2008 to be 70, so that would be almost 90 years. 87 years. This was 23 years before independence. This was 22 years before independence. 22 years before independence, 87 years from Oni Iba Insane. So when people tell you that something started in 2023, please, don't let them gaslight you. Their parents were doing it in the 1930s. And by the way, that's not even what you are doing. What you are doing, you are reacting. All right, let's go back to this. So what have we talked about? Number one, we've talked about what he did with Chief H.O. Davis, calling him a simpleton. We've talked about what he did with Adetokunbo Ademola to go against him when the British were talking about the possibility of actually appointing him as magistrate. But is that all? Why would you just see this small thing and say, oh, he's against the movement? No, that's not all. What other thing happened? Let's discuss 1938 elections again. After that election, there was a rumor. That's what I was looking for. I found it. There was a rumor that Neville Chamberlain was negotiating to transfer Nigeria to Hitler. They were going to transfer you, and all of you will be speaking German now, to Hitler. So Alakija decided to, you're laughing, it's true now, all of us will be speaking German. Anyway, Alakija wrote against that stuff that Neville Chamberlain was thinking of doing. And this is what he said. He said that Nigerians had accepted Britain not as a conqueror, but as a protector. If she was no longer capable of performing that role, she should quit. And Nigerians would then either protect themselves or invite some other nation to protect them until they were able to stand on their feet. All of this was happening around the time of the war. Again, when we talk about the war, we're talking about the 1930s. This has nothing to do with Nigerian civil war. The chief secretary of the colonial government had problems with that. He didn't like what Alakija had written. So he called Alakija and Sir Kofa Bayomi, and he spoke to them and, essentially just told them that what they did was unacceptable. But then in that meeting, Sir Kofa Bayomi said something, which is not published in this book, by the way. He said something that the other leaders of the movement were not happy with. Excuse me. The other leaders of the movement were not happy with the statement that Kofa Bayomi made. Therefore, they decided to have a meeting. In that meeting, you had people like Mr. Ikoli, that's Ernest Ikoli, Obasanjo Akinsoya, H.O. Davis, Akinola Maja, then O. Alakija, and then Dr. Azikiwe. They had that meeting, and it was not something that anybody was supposed to hear about. But what happened was that after the meeting, the very next day, Azikiwe published everything they discussed in that meeting. And he had this big headline. Let me read the headline to you. It's Youth Movement Taught Us. In other words, Ofe Shubu. He put that out there, and people started wondering, why would you publish something that was supposed to be for us? And I'll tell you why. Money, influence, clout. That's it. You sell your papers, money. People know it's you that did it, influence. And then you can move around town, clout. That's literally why. There's no spiritual, there's nothing deep about what he did. It's what you do when you're an ego-driven person. But let's continue. So he says, a meeting was held at the house of Sir Kofa Bayomi to thrash out the matter. True enough, it was a stormy meeting, but it was all done in secret. Only very few members of the movement knew about it. Then, to the horror of everybody, there was a front-page banner headline in the pilot: Youth Movement Taught Us. A garbled story of this behind closed doors affair was then told. So that's the number 3 issue. The next issue was what happened with the by-election in 1940 to fill a vacant seat in the Lagos Town Council. Obasanjo Akinsoya was a candidate of the NYM, but Dr. Azikiwe launched an all-out attack against him on the pages of West African Pilot. In other words, you are APC. I am APC. No, APC doesn't even cut it. NYM was NYM. There's nothing to compare to NYM. It was like our own. We will deal with Yimbo, and we'll make sure NNDP does not win, because we are the ones who have the vision for what Nigeria should become. This is 1930s, 1940s. It's not even comparable to any political party in recent times, right? Now you are a member of that movement. The movement is using your paper, and then you are now writing against your fellow comrade in that movement, who is supposed to, he already lost the 1938 elections. Now he has another opportunity, you now write against him. By the way, 1941, he backed him to destroy the party, but we'll talk about that very soon. So essentially, it's an anti-party activity. So you are publishing, things that are damning, that would, of course, reduce his chances of winning. So he says here, there was a by-election in 1940 to fill a vacant seat in the Lagos Town Council. It was a straight fight, as before, between the NYM and the NNDP. What's NNDP? Anybody remembers? We're in class. NNDP, anybody? Please, who knows the full meaning of NNDP and who founded it? The second one, you can easily, I know people will easily get that one. So, HM, everybody can call it yes. What does it mean? Nigerian National Democratic Party. Let's move very fast. So it says here, it was a straight fight as before between the NYM and NNDP. Obasanjo Akinsoya was the candidate of the NYM, but Dr. Azikiwe launched an all-out attack against him on the pages of the West African Pilot. The things that were written about Oba Akinsoya are too crude for reproduction here. Another thing that he did, when NYM was founded, it published, okay, I already mentioned this, that NYM published they used to publish a quarterly journal. So they would do it once every 3 months, right? It was called Service. After Azikiwe got into Nigeria, and he started his, West African Pilot, it was so successful that people were like, why should we even bother publishing anything? let's just choose West African Pilot. So they were using West African Pilot as an organization. So they didn't have their own newspapers. They were just publishing inside West African Pilot. But after a while, they were like, you know what, at this point, I think it's going to make sense for us to have our service resuscitated, that service paper. So they were going to have a weekly, so they say it had been hoped that in due course, this journal might be published monthly or weekly. With the advent of Dr. Azikiwe, service was abandoned and the NYM placed complete reliance on the Pilot for the propagation of its ideals and for the defense of its cause. Because again, West African Pilot was the in thing at the time. It was the hot pie. Like it was that's what I'm looking for. You get the point, Sha? Everybody wanted to have it. They wanted to have a piece of the pie. So it was good. Then he said, let's have our own. Let's resuscitate what we have abandoned, and then we'll make it weekly. We'll call it, or even daily. We'll call it daily service. Now, when they made that decision, Azikiwe was part of that executive committee, Central Executive Committee. And when they did it, when eventually they decided to start publishing daily service, Azikiwe lost no time in criticizing it openly. Chief H.O. Davies was appointed by the movement to tour the country in order to solicit shares from members and supporters of the movement. And he also became a victim, or the victim of scurrilous and damaging attacks in the Pilot. What you are saying is a person, what you would expect is this. Let me tell you something. I don't think Zik owes anybody support, as long as he's not a member of that movement. In other words, if you're not a member of the movement, you can speak against it. Why? It's a competition. You can try to make sure that only your papers will sell. That's fine. But what you should have done is, I don't agree with your stuff. I don't align with this. I'm out. But no, Zik go remain there, destroy the scene. Based on waiting, ego. Let's continue. We were used to HMs calling certain people imperialist agents. These people were rechristened by Dr. Azikiwe imperialist stooges, Uncle Toms, and Auntie Jemimas. And then so he did that, he would insult them, call them Uncle Toms and Jemimas, just use very disparaging words because, of course, he could. He had the paper, right? At the same time, in fact, let me just go back a bit. So he says, we were used to HMs calling certain people imperialist agents. These people were rechristened by Dr. Azikiwe imperialist stooges, Uncle Toms, and Auntie Jemimas. So far, so good. But as time went on, he added on to this list of Uncle Toms and so on, the names of people whose patriotism and nationalism had never been in doubt. You only had to disagree with him on any issue, however minor, and you at once qualified to go on the blacklist. At the same time, he skillfully loaded himself to the very skies. Almost every day, there were letters to the editor published in the Pilot, eulogizing Zik for doing this, that, and the other new and hitherto unknown and unheard of good things for Nigeria, nay, for Africa. Some of the writers acclaimed him as a Gandhi of Africa, whilst others declared that certain things that he had written or done had alexified them. These epistolary panegyrics were apparently written by persons who were dying to see their names in print. They got the desired publicity, and in due course, more and more of them competed with each other in the name of Gandhization. Dr. Azikiwe, it will be readily considered to him that epistolary panegyrics were apparently written by persons who were dying to see their names in print. They got the desired publicity, and in due course, more and more of them competed with each other in the name of Gandhization of Zik and alexification of themselves. Whatever anyone may say about Dr. Azikiwe, it will be readily considered to him that he was the first consummate propagandist that Nigeria produced. Again, I'd like to mention that this book was published in 1960. Azikiwe at the time was Senate President. Of course, Governor General. So, let me say, wasn't written behind his back, and he had 36 years to respond. And by the way, he responded in 1970 with his own odyssey, and it's available. We'll read it when the time comes. He didn't do a good job defending himself, to be honest. Actually, he didn't defend himself because there was nothing to defend. They're just talking about his character. Where were we? He observed neither modesty nor wreck in inflating his own ego or in deflating that of his opponent. In this connection, he is in direct line of succession to Herbert Macaulay, whom Dr. Azikiwe has claimed to be his journalistic and political father. But like all sons who are worthy of their parentage, he is greater than his father in this particular respect. What else happened? When the agitation against the cocoa pool was raging, and we mentioned this already, when the agitation against cocoa pool was raging, though the pilots carried one or two articles and reports on the subject, Dr. Azikiwe showed no interest whatsoever. Also, when the ban on palm kernels was imposed, the pilot supported it. Said the pilot, the measure by the government is fair. Instead of reducing the whole country into poverty, I'll take that again. The measure by the government is fair. Instead of reducing the whole country into poverty, only the western provinces will be affected and they can switch over to other avenues to make body and soul live. What was the context of Koto Shelebi? Let me quickly explain. You see, Sir Bernard Bodilion had made that Bodilion, the street named after the president's house, the street. He had made this announcement, right, during the war that Nigerians farmers specifically, should cultivate cash crops, specifically palm kernel, cotton, and groundnut. So a lot of people went to farm and just did that. Of course, there was cocoa as well, but essentially majorly it was palm kernel, groundnut, and cotton. Now, after a while, he came back and told the people, guys, we cannot buy the palm kernel from the west. They will buy palm kernel from the east, but not from the west. And the problem with that is the farmers who had put everything they owned into that particular business to want to buy one here. And so Awolowo was, by the way, at that time, Awolowo was a produce buyer. If you were here in the previous session, you'd have heard us talk about this. Awolowo was a produce buyer, and he was the one who was representing he was one who wrote the petition on behalf of all the farmers, and they had a meeting in a place called Mapo Hall in Ibadan. They submitted that stuff to the petition, and eventually they had everything, turned around. But here's the point. You see, while Awolowo was fighting for those people, Awolowo did not have any newspaper. By the way, Awolowo did not have a paper until 1949, which, incidentally, it is the longest surviving newspaper in Nigeria today. So Awo did not have a newspaper, Zik had a paper, but what Awo did was to work with the Produce Association in Ibadan at the time, and also the farmers, to demand that the government, reverse that policy of not purchasing anything from the western region, because again, these farmers went to farm, put everything in it, and now they have their harvest. You are saying you don't want to buy, but they went to cultivate it because you asked them to do so. Eventually, they turned everything around. But in the meantime, Zeke had published something crazy. This is what he said. It says the measure by the government is fair. Instead of reducing the whole country into poverty, only the western provinces will be affected and they can switch over to other avenues to make body and soul live. In other words, as far as this thing did not affect his own region, it's fine. It's not the western region. They will find other things, Jare. He said it was fair. He didn't say it was fair because of any other thing, but because at least it's not all of us that will suffer. It's only western region that will suffer. I'm not making it up. I'm reading exactly what Zik published. If you were a nationalist and you had this kind of person, would you not begin to wonder if this person actually cares about the whole or the collective? I mean, if you're sold out to the collective goal, what you would do is, even if you think it's fair, everybody is fighting these people because they are the ones that will impoverish the farmers. Why would you support them? At least in public, you wouldn't. Especially when you have an organ and a newspaper that everybody actually reads. But again, that's it. Let's continue. As a result of his indifference to these two economic crises, which threatened the livelihood of the people of the Western region, as well as the economy of the country as a whole, some of us began to wonder what Dr. Azikiwe's economic determinism really meant in practice. In other circumstances, Dr. Azikiwe would have dipped his pen in gall, as was his wont, and on the pages of the pilot, under his own name or in an editorial column, would have denounced the cocoa pool as an imperialist device or stratagem whose aim, object, or purpose was to oppress, repress, depress, and distress Nigerian cocoa producers and dealers economically. In the same manner, he would have vehemently declaimed the ban on palm kernels in the western provinces as a gross betrayal of trust, an indelible stain, blemish, and stigma on British imperialism, a vain attempt, a complete misfire, and a palpable boner in the realm of divide et impera. He's just using the words that Azikiwe would have used. The words in quotation marks were not exactly Dr. Azikiwe's, but they are typical of his early style. If the man could not go out and campaign against those unwelcome government measures, he could at least write it in his paper in support of the agitators. He did not. Guess what? I don't think he should have even written about it. You see, in some instances in this life, if you cannot add to something, don't take from it. Unless you're trying to maybe make it better. So you can talk about it as it is, you can try to make it better, but don't try to reduce people, especially when they're on the right path. If you're on the wrong path, that's different, but somebody says exactly the same thing that the Messiah did in the last election. When they came up with this Naira policy and they were essentially mopping out money during the election, everybody was complaining, but Peter Obi said it was a good policy. It's the same thing. It's not about the people, it's about his own chances. People were queuing up. Guys, please don't stop our tapping on TikTok. Let's get this to 100 and then we can scale. Thank you. People were queuing up. People were fainting in banking halls, ATM points all over the place. And you came out and said, oh, it's a good policy. Why? Because it's not about care for the people. That's why when... Let me finish that statement. It's not about care for the people, it's about ambition. That's why when Chimamanda wrote last week that he's not desperate to be president, I was like, who do you think you are talking to? Followers of Nnamdi Kanu or who? That this man is not desperate. Please, how else do you show if you are desperate, Jare, my brothers and sisters? There's nobody, none of the people that are trying to become president who is as desperate as Peter Obi. None. None. And guess what? I don't mind. But don't come and tell us Friday is Monday. He's desperate and it's okay. If he wants to be desperate, that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying he should not be desperate. If that is Gotori around here, that's okay. That's what he wants to do. It's fine. I'm going to serve one term. He's not desperate. Thank you, Jare Okbelenge. I serve only one term. Some bad people on Twitter are using the word tip. I'm not going to explain that. And please do not write in the comment section, but just understand. Say just the tip. Just 4 years. The same person who talks say he would never leave. He even said he should die if he left Abga. Literally has a history of desperation. And do I have a problem with that? No. What do I have a problem with? The fact that you are telling me that he's not desperate, that's why you are taking people for a fool. Like you think that we are fools. He's not desperate. How else do you show desperation? By standing on Third Milan Bridge. I beg. Anyway, the point is that if it's going to work in his favor, nobody really cares. Money policy, CBN policy, let people die if they want to die, as long as you are able to win the elections, which is why he lost, which is why we lose again, inshallah. I'm not even a Muslim. That's how deep it is. But may God bless him and keep him. I look at his antecedents. He was a good man. I used to actually look at this man and think, this guy is always talking about saving money. Until now, go and verify. When you now go and verify, I have a list here. Tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow. We went to verify the things we saw. Oh my God. Oh, jigby. Who used to say that thing? Papa Jasko. Oh, jigby. The things we found. Oh my God. We are verified. We'll start talking about what we found after verifying. Anyway, let's move on. So what I'm trying to say is that whatever it is that he is doing, Zeke did something similar. An article written by Zeke himself, published on the front page of the Pilot and entitled Football Iliad 1940 edition, shocked many people. It was a big step forward in an insidious campaign which had gone on for more than 2 years on the pages of the Pilot. When did this happen? 1940. How long has this been going on? 2 years, which means what? 1938. Somebody on YouTube, on TikTok says the Igbos have produced smart and talented people. So I wonder how this PO is able to bewitch them. I have something I could tell you that will make you not wonder anymore. You wonder no more. It's a very simple thing. And there are exceptions to this rule. To this thing I'm about to say, there are many exceptions. But the many is few compared to the other group. Generally, it seems as if folks from certain parts of Nigeria think the same way regardless of the educational achievements or career advancement. It doesn't really matter. What was Chimamanda saying? Inclusion. What's inclusion? To make an Igbo president. Why? Because they've never been president before. Says who? You've had 2 Igbo presidents in Nigeria. Oh, since 1999. Why should you become president in 1999? There's never been a Tiv president since 1999. There's never been an Igala president since 1999. There's never been a Hausa president since 1999. That says the big ones. There's never been a Hausa president since 1999. We've not had an Angas president since 1999. Not Nupe, nobody from Langtang. We don't have Bachama, Ibibio. Where are we stopping? Where are we stopping? The Jukuns. So why is it that because you have no, why? Was it because they went through something? Well, no. Whatever people went through, they took care of them in 1979, period. And God bless the leaders for doing what they did at the time. In 1979, we had 3 major parties. 3 major ones had Igbo as vice president or vice presidential candidate or presidential candidate. Shehu Shagari had an Igbo vice presidential candidate. Even Awolowo, who is a Christian and from the south, had an Igbo, a Christian from the south, as vice president. Philip Umeaji in 1979. Zeke also ran as an Igbo person. And when they won, they ensured that there was an Igbo on every ticket. Why? Because they were trying to placate them and say, okay, we are all together. If they did this in 79, and even now you act as if it did not happen, then no. Nobody, I'll say that, I know it's not today's topic, but I will repeat it. Nobody in Nigeria has any leverage again as far as the presidency is concerned. There's nothing you can use to bamboozle or blackmail anybody. Everybody don't get their own bit, including Yoruba people. That's why, if you notice, this last election, did you see where Yoruba we must become president? No, that statement that was Yoruba Lokon was among APC members in Ogun State. The generation of Nigeria, if you bring it out, we vote for you. If you don't bring it out, we don't vote for you. So what we enjoyed as Yoruba people in 1999 because of 1993, which Igbos enjoyed in 1979 because of 1970, which the Ijaws enjoyed in 2007 because of the Mend crisis. Nobody is enjoying anything again based on anything. That's the point I'm trying to make. All of us have enjoyed something based on something. Therefore, let's move on as equals. You bring your manifesto, you play your game, you can do, and I will quickly move on. Let me say this before I move on. There are 2 major ways to becoming political leaders in Nigeria. 2 major ways that work. There are actually 3, but 2 that work. That it will work. The third one doesn't usually work. The third one is the one that a lot of people do. I want to be president, I will run. It rarely works. without one of these two. What do I mean? The first one of the two is that you have a godfather. You want to be president, but you're not going to just run on your own. You have a godfather. In other words, he has done some work. He has leverage. He has goodwill. You are going to be leveraging on what he has, which was what you saw with Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and also with Goodluck Jonathan. There was Obasanjo. Yar'Adua did not win because he was that good. And by the way, all these things that people say about how great Yar'Adua was, one of these is we're going to talk about it. Three things. We also did something that got us in trouble, including reversal of sales of refineries. But may God rest his soul, may his soul rest in peace. You must have a godfather. You either, not that you must, you either have a godfather who is able to, you are climbing on his shoulders. Like they say, you see father because you're climbing on shoulders of those who are going ahead of you. So you are leveraging on his goodwill or in his connections, maybe even sometimes on his money. Waiting Jonathan gets where they bring come to election. Number two, you must be the godfather. In other words, you have played, but you can only become that because you have played the long game. So you are the godfather. You are your own godfather, but you cannot be your own godfather without playing the long game, which is what President Tinubu did. 30 years he was chilling. Even, I can even say 40 years, to be honest, but let's just say 30 years because that's the one that's just is straight and you can find the congruence. It was just chilling. Was in this party, worked with this person, he was with them Yar'Adua and Atiku, he was senator, he did this, joined Adeco, he did that, he had his people, he had connections, then he went into AD, became governor for 8 years, for 4 years the first time with other AD governors. The 5 governors were packed out, he went only home, AD became AC, they had the presidential. AC became ACN, they had a presidential candidate. It was not him. AC had Atiku. He could have run. Shebon Lodi party, he didn't run. What was he doing? He was building. ACN had Nuri Badu and Folade Ola. He didn't run. ACN worked with CPC and became APC. He didn't run. Buhari ran on that ticket. What do you think he was doing? So, two things. If, unless that third part that they say really works, maybe God says, my son, that are the next Kiniko. Even that one, better hear very well to be sure you are hearing God. You now go and run. Maybe you will win. And that is not impossible, by the way. It's possible. But I'm talking about the one way human beings do. The one that what God cannot do does not exist. So that one is in the realm of the divine. But in the realm of mere mortals, you either have somebody who has done the work for you and you are now leveraging on what they've done, or you have done the work, but that's a long-term plan. Until then, you can have 6 million votes. Some people had 12 million. Buhari had 12 million votes 3 times. Only once did he have less than 12 million. That was in 2011. But it was consistent. And then he leveraged on somebody else, and then he became president. It is what it is. Let's go back to the book. So, Football Iliad, 1940. I think the craziest bit from Zik really was the Football Iliad that was published in 1940. And in case you were not here, I'll quickly go over it. I won't do this next time. I can't promise that, but most likely they go. Anyway, here's the point. There was a football match between St. Gregory in Lagos and CKC, Christ the King College, Onitsha. They had this match and CKC won 5-4. Not 5-0, 5-4. In other words, CKC had 5. The Greg's guys had 4. Now it's a secondary school match. What do? You enjoy it, you clap for them, secondary school, so you're like, you guys did well done, and that would be it. But not for Zik. Let me read to you what Zik wrote. Because in fact, let me first read what Papa wrote before I read to you what Zik wrote. A football team composed of students of the Christ the King's College, Onitsha, came to Lagos to play a win-the-war football match against St. Gregory's College. The CKC team from Onitsha defeated St. Gregory's team by 5-4. To the ordinary man in the street, let alone the highly sophisticated elements, there in one school or college defeating another in a game of soccer, but not so with Dr. Azikiwe. He saw in the sporting exploits and triumph of the team from Onitsha the inherent superiority of the Easterners over their opponents, and he went to very great pains. He went to very great pains to establish this fact by means of careful choice of words and emphasis. These extracts from the article are relevant. I think the craziest bit from Zik really was the football Iliad that was published in 1940. A football team composed of students of the craziest bit from Zik, really the King's College, Onitsha, came to Lagos to play a win-the-war football match against St. Gregory's College. The CKC team from Onitsha defeated St. Gregory's team by 5-4. To the ordinary man in the street, let alone the highly sophisticated elements, there was nothing extraordinary or unusual in one school or college defeating another in a game of soccer, but not so with Dr. Azikiwe. He saw in the sporting exploits and triumph of the team from Onitsha the inherent superiority of the Easterners over their opponents, and he went to very great pains to establish this fact by means of careful choice of words and emphasis. These extracts from the article are relevant. And then, this is Zik speaking, and then to think of the great combination of the Spartan heroes who crossed the lordly Niger, journeyed through the good earth of Benin, hurried across the domains of the Oshemawe of Ondo, of the Atala of Owo, and the Owa of Ilesha, of the Oni of Ife, of the Alake of Abeokuta in their invasion of these islands. Who but heroes of mighty brawn and exceptionally developed brain would have dared to make this invasion and to succeed in carrying to their River Niger home the golden fleece of intercollegiate soccer championship of the eastern and western provinces? Yet they came to Lagos. They saw the irresistible defense put up by their opponents, and they conquered impressively, convincingly, and were graceful even in victory. Could their achievement be paralleled? Would it not be better for me to leave the answer to the laps of the gods? Secondary school maths. It's not Super Falcons or Super Eguzo. Secondary school maths, 1940. Exceptionally developed brain. Now you say, "I'm Greg's near Lokpolo near Abi." Abibeko. But no. I will always started tribalism. It's a lie. Again, like I always say, every accusation is a confession. Anybody who looks at you and says you are a tribalist, that person is confessing to you who they are. That's their own identity. That's their own trait. 1940 on top secondary school match. But let me tell you what makes it funny. On 24th August 1940, however, the same CKC team played in Ibadan against the Olubadan 11 in another win-the-war match. The CKC were beaten 3-2 by the Olubadan 11, which were an undiluted Yoruba team. Which means, of course, St. Greg's had people from different places, because Lagos, St. Greg's is in Lagos, Gogon, right? So it makes sense. They'll be mixed. But this one, Yoruba Pombili, one or be where Kobad no 3-2. Apart from sending the news to the daily service myself, I also saw to it that it was wired to the pilot. It was after there had been clamors in the daily service in form of letters to the editor that the news of this Ibadan match was published some 2 weeks later in the pilot. Even then, it was a small item on the back page, and it was explained in it that the CKC team were already tired and that some of them were in fact limping before they went into the field against Olubadan 11. This was, of course, untrue. Why would a newspaper have to explain the loss of secondary school pupils, students? They are kids. They played a match, they won. Okay, one try. They played another match, they lost. So what's this about? Oh, they were limping, they were tired. Let me ask you a question before we continue. Onitsha to Ibadan and Onitsha to Lagos, which one, where will you get to first? Which one is shorter? I know both are far from Onitsha. But if you are trying from Onitsha to Ibadan, or you are going from Onitsha to Lagos, where you go reach first? Not Ibadan. So how come you're not tired going to Lagos, or you're tired going to Ibadan, but Ibadan is closer to Onitsha than Lagos? It's amazing. Somebody said the same explanation was missing in the first match. Now, because again, why did he do that? And why did he mention everybody's towns? They went from Owa, Ilesha, Oshemawe of Ondo, the towns of Benin, invaded, they went through Oshemawe of Ondo, and then they went and these invasions, in the invasion of these islands on top of secondary school match. What year? 1940, Lord, don't let anybody come and tell you something started in 2023. And guess what? We are not starting anything. We're not even doing it. We're just finishing it. And no, it's not just about street names. More are coming. Get ready for it. I feel like singing Negro spirituals. Let's go on. Oh, no, go cry. I said before that the CKC episode was a big step forward in an insidious campaign which had gone on for more than 2 years on the pages of the pilot. One or two more instances will be given. By the time the pilot had published for a year, when did the pilot start publishing? 1937. But by 1938, an important feature of the paper had become manifest. The Igbos in particular were given inordinate publicity on the pages of the paper. I said I would do a session on the evolution of media in Nigeria. Newspaper in Nigeria started in 1859. And the first newspaper in Nigeria was in Yoruba language. The very first newspaper ever was in Abeokuta, 1859. Then you had Lagos after the Abeokuta paper. Of course, it's the same 19th century, in the 1800s. Eventually, by the time West African pilot came, it was a big deal. I have said it over and over again. And you cannot in any way wish away the beauty or the influence of West African pilot in its heydays, right? It was celebrated. However, you see, one of the things people started noticing is that this particular paper talked more about ethnicity or certain ethnic groups. I'll explain later. Let me read a bit. By the time the pilot had published for a year, this is by 1938, an important feature of the paper had become manifest. The Igbos in particular were given inordinate publicity on the pages of the paper. Perhaps this was as it should be. The Igbo had never had a share in newspaper publicity before the advent of the pilot. But equally so, no Yoruba man of the class of the Igbos publicized in the pilot ever had a share of publicity in any paper either. What does that mean? Let me read it. I'll explain. Let's just keep reading. In those days, one had to be an outstanding politician, a big shot in society, or a well-connected person for one's name to appear in the Nigerian Daily Times, Nigerian Daily Telegraph, and Lagos Daily News. Those are the three major papers: Nigerian Daily Times, Nigerian Daily Telegraph. Daily Times was Mr. Bates, Daily Telegraph was Azikiwe, Lagos Daily News was about Macaulay. So you have to be very big for them to even put your pictures there, right? Or to even talk about you. Regardless of ethnicity, if you're a big politician, they'll put you there. If you are a socialite, they'll put you there. But regular people, why would they care to do that? Let's continue. In those days, one had to be an outstanding politician, a big shot in society, or a well-connected person for one's name to appear in the Nigerian Daily Times, Nigerian Daily Telegraph, and Lagos Daily News. Of course, if you had a friend working in the news or composing section of a paper, no matter who you are, you might be slipped in. Names of people like myself appeared in the paper simply because we were agitators or freelance journalists. All the same, it was generally agreed that the Igbos needed all the boosting they could get. But Dr. Azikiwe went about it in a manner which disgusted those of us who were used to describing citizens of Nigeria. Listen to this bit. Guys, pay attention, please. It says, Dr. Azikiwe went about it in a manner which disgusted those of us who were used to describing citizens of Nigeria as Nigerians or Africans and regarding their achievements as reflecting credit on Nigeria, indeed Africa as a whole. Do you remember the letter that Papa wrote to Odutola, where he was talking about the fact that if you do this for me, you've done it for Africa? Is that mindset? Their mindset was about the continent and the country. They weren't thinking about the ethnicities. So if a Yoruba person went to the UK and traveled and go back to Nigeria, they will say an African or a Nigerian doctor or an African doctor. The Nigerianization of Yoruba achievements started in the 1920s or became big in the 20s. It started earlier, started in the late 19th century to be clear. We had doctors graduating from universities in the UK in the 1800s. And I remember mentioning one who started a dispensary in Shaki in 1902. The man traveled all the way from Lagos to Shaki. He studied in Scotland. His name is Shakpara. Oguntola Shakpara Williams. When these people returned to Nigeria, they were just, people just celebrate them. Oh, Nigerian doctor, Nigerian this, first African this, first African that. But that was not enough for Zik. It wasn't enough for Zik. So what did Zik do? Instead of, they were used to saying, oh, we are African educator, African doctor, Nigerian this, African that. That was them. This was how Zik reported his own. Number one, in his own papers, his pilot. Igbo young man to sail to UK is the heading of a front page story and picture on September 23, 1938. In other words, everybody was thinking nationalistically. Nigeria first, Africa first, Nigeria first, Africa great, Guinea great, all those fantastic things. Z came and said, Igbo man is traveling, Igbo young man to sail to the UK, which was in 1938. By the way, that's the same young man who got back to Nigeria and declared that Lagos was no man's land in 1947. It didn't take him 10 years to say that. So, and that's Mr. Jaja Wachuku, who became the Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives. Excuse me. That was 1938. Let's read what happened in 1939. 14th West African student, 10th Nigerian, 8th Igbo in USA. Another front page story on January 28, 1939. The 8th Igbo is Mr. Nwafọ Rizu, now senator in Nigeria's upper house. The same one for Rizu. One day I go do one session on top of. I don't do them before, I will go do them again. Let's read one from 1940. Igbo medical student passes exam in first class honors. Yet another front page story on June 26, 1940. The brilliant success of Dr. S.O. Egwatu. A few more from 1938. A model union is what they wrote in praise of the Bibio State Union, August 8, 1938. Another one, 1 year ago, August 18, 1938, celebrating the first anniversary of the call to the bar of the first Igbo lawyer in the person of Mr. Justice Louis Mbanefo, now Chief Justice of the Eastern Region High Court. The one that's crazy is the one they published on December 31, 1938. Guess the headline, The Igbo Are Coming. Again, remember, all the members of NYM were nationalists. They didn't talk about their ethnicities. They were proud of it, but it wasn't on the front burner. They were talking about Nigeria and Africa. This man came and just started putting Igbo everywhere. That's why a few years after I started doing this, they actually had a plan. to become the main group. Again, if you are Igbo here, this is not against you as a person. It's just what your leaders did in the past. I saw a post on Twitter earlier today where people were talking about, when people were talking about what happened in the past, and folks said, we didn't do it, it's not our fault. A group who hates the idea of accountability cannot make progress. Why? There's no perfect human, there's no perfect group, including my own. I'm a human being. I'm Yoruba. Yoruba is a great ethnic group, fantastic. We are wonderful, powerful, but we're not perfect. If they tell you what you did wrong, you fix up. Or in some cases, at least acknowledge it. Maybe that will even sort this thing. Acknowledge it, not asking people to pay you for reparations after killing them. But that's not the worst, by the way. We still have a few more things. So they had Igbo are coming in a place where everybody was thinking about Nigeria. When was that? December 31, 1938. Far away from 2023. It's not about elections. These are but a few examples of the publicity given to Igbos as a group. But as against this, the achievements of Yorubas, and in particular the academic laurels of their scholars, received, if at all, inconspicuous notice in the pilot. When an Igbo did or was about to do something praiseworthy, he was invariably given a 2-column headline and report in the pilot, and was always described by his ethnic origin in the headlines. But when the PhD degree of London University, indeed of any university for that matter, was conferred on the first Nigerian ever, the historic news was given a small single-column space in the pilot, and the headline read, "Nigerian economist passes PhD London." There's a young man who I think works with NASA or something. He's a Yoruba young person, he's a Yoruba man, who took Egusi to space station. They took Egusi to the space station, I think it was last week. He posted something on his Twitter handle and he said, he did that because he was going to take Nigerian culture to space. People spoke up. What do you mean Nigerian culture? What do you mean Nigerian culture? There's no Nigerian culture. That's Yoruba food. That's Yoruba culture. He may never be an apologist. He may just be the regular pre-1938. The idea that we are all one, we are all together, we are all... It's not happening again. It's Yoruba wedding. It's not Nigerian wedding. You can copy it, it's fine. But it's Yoruba wedding. It's Yoruba dressing. It's Yoruba clothing. It's anko. It's ashwebi. It's not ashebi. It's ashwebi. It's not ashebi. It's gele. It's fila. It's gobi. It's Yoruba. Again, like I said, if you're not careful, and I used to think like this, to be honest. These things are petty now. This is not the real thing. I want to go, let's talk real history. I love history. I love history. And I started with very, very strong stuff as a teenager, so I love history. But guess what? These petty things, this is history in the making. They are conditioning a people to accept that their stuff can belong to everybody. Meanwhile, whatever belongs to those people who are doing that is only held by them. Although there's not much that is being copied. Also, you have your people making this mistake of spelling certain words and using KP. In case you did not do Yoruba spelling well in school, there is no KP in our alphabet. It's P. Our P is P in English. It's P. It's not KP. It's not. You're not spelling Pali with KP. You're not spelling Pomo with KP. You're not spelling Jakpa with KP. It is P. Like this. This thing where we're all together. No. What is yours cannot be yours, and then you want to make what is mine ours. If what is yours, what is mine cannot be ours, it's mine. What is yours, and I celebrate you. May God bless you. May God increase you. But what is yours. What is mine is mine. What is yours cannot be yours, and what is mine becomes ours. It's not going to all of that. We have to be intentional about these things, because it's not about it. It's not really about Egusi. Who cares? It's not about Egusi. It's about something deeper. Erasure that is acceptable to you as a person, and you're even part of your own elimination. It's deeper than Egusi. It's about people telling you, why are you speaking your language? Can't you just speak English? Or say it's not just language. It's not about that. It's about your identity. Listen, when I was in secondary school, I was in secondary school in the 90s. When I was in secondary school, we did some courses where we were taught that some of their words have gone extinct. This is more than 30 years ago. Some words from certain languages in Nigeria have already gone extinct. They don't know the words for those things. They use English for those words. They use the English words for those objects, or for those things. So objects, things, whatever it is, abstract, non-abstract, real, they use English words to substitute because they don't know the Oroyene in that local language. So maybe what does it take? You must speak English. No, you must learn Yoruba. Why? Just your language is your identity. And let's try. I know it's not easy, but again, who says it will be easy? We don't do easy things, we do good things, right? If it's easy, that's a plus. But if it's not easy, let's just do it regardless. Let's normalize reducing code mixing. I do it too, but when we're around our children, wàá sọ Yorùbá àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ kan wà tó jẹ́ pé ó máa ṣe pé kókó fi Gẹ̀ẹ́sì sọ ṣùgbọ́n fún àrẹwà pé Yorùbá mo gbọ́dọ̀ fi sọ eléyìí bá mú kálámù wá bá mú gègé wá. That's a pen. You know the funny thing, if you're very good with your language, you'll be very good with the English language as well. It doesn't make you lose your ability to speak English well. It doesn't. There's certain things that, what's kalamu? Kalamu is gege. Oluwanishola, what's gege? Nobody should type it to. Oluwanishola, what is gege? Oluwanishola, what is gege? If you know gege, you get it. It's pen. So kalamu is a synonym for hair. It's the same thing. So gege, kalamu is pen. Somebody said Busui or Maso Igbo will be funny. Hey, you know those people? But let's normalize it. I'll tell you something before we continue. I was in uni. I used to watch. I grew up in Ibadan, so we go home from time to time watch BCOS. There was this interview. Professor Akinwumi Shola, the author of Koshegbe, Shaoro Idaoleku, all those books. And the movies and films. He had this interview on BCOS. That thing left an indelible mark on my life. He said, was it something about I want to saw Amulumala. It was very instructive. Let me tell you how he said it. I still remember. He said, I want to Amulumala ti Gẹ̀ẹ́sì Yorùbá wọn gbọ́ èyìnbó ọ̀ngàn Gẹ̀ẹ́sì ọ̀ngàn wọn gbọ́ dójú àmì. I was like, I was in university. I was like, this is profound. My mother come for you. My mother, I will tell my daddy for you. Òyìnbó náà ní gbàdùn ní dé bẹ́ẹ̀. Òyìnbó yẹn náà ò dé bẹ́ẹ̀. Yorùbá yẹn náà máa lọ́pọ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ kó sọ Yorùbá yìí. Tó pé Yorùbá nìkan kan la lè sọ ká kó sọ ká sọ pẹ̀lú ká sọ tọkàntọkàn. So please, let's try. And I'm saying that because all these petty, so-called petty things, we need to be very, very intentional about, taking it back. Okay. So I said that to say that, Busi go on Masoimbo, Tomak Pwe mi ma lo. Let me switch the audio source. It's almost 7, but we're going to be here. Tomak Pwe mi ma, I promise I'll go. If they call me, I will answer. Whatever is yours is yours. Whatever is mine is mine. God bless all of us. We'll go in Jesus' name. Let's get back to this. So this man had a PhD, and then Pilot published it and said, Nigerian economist passes PhD London. The scholar concerned was Dr. Fadikpe, a Yoruba. As late as 1945, 2 Nigerian law students of Cambridge University, one Yoruba and one Igbo, passed the law triples examination. The Yoruba passed with second-class honors upper division. Sorry, I'll take that again. The Yoruba passed with second-class honors upper division, and the Igbo also passed with second-class honors, but in the lower division. The latter, that's the one with 2-2, got front-page publicity in the Pilot, but the former got a small space given to him on the back page a few days after the report of his Igbo colleague had appeared. As for outstanding Yoruba public men, listen to this, guys. As for outstanding Yoruba public men, they were all of them dubbed as imperialist stooges and Uncle Toms. Apart from failing to give publicity to the achievements of the Yoruba and holding their public men to obloquy, the Pilot always made sure that all their misdoings received due publicity. As many of the unsavory aspects of Yoruba life as its news gatherers could muster received banner headlines in the Pilot. In contrast to this, care was taken to ensure that any misdoing of the Igbo was kept out of the newspaper. Whenever a non-Yoruba name was mentioned in the Pilot, in connection with a trial or conviction for a crime, meticulous care was taken to indicate the tribe of the accused or convicted person. Not many people then and now could differentiate an Igbo name from an Edo name or Ijo name, for instance. So in order to make assurance doubly sure that the reading public were not misled into thinking that an Igbo man had been mixed up in any reported ugly business, a non-Yoruba name was invariably correctly identified by its tribal origin. What is all this to Renchi? 2 things. Number 1, they had this thing for going after Yoruba public men in the 1930s. They would attack, is exactly what's happening right now. If it's not Professor Wole Soyinka today, it's Pastor Adeboye. If it's not Adeboye, it's Kumuyi. If it's not Kumuyi, it's Oyedepo. If it's not Oyedepo, they will look for somebody, sir, but guess what? The only qualification is that the person is Yoruba. And some of us who are very naive, you will join them. Aja momote egbepo, habiba mansono. You know when people are using you to destroy what's yours. Olukoya, thank you. And then your governors, your governors, your politicians, Yoruba people, your politicians, they are not the best though. In terms of, I'm not saying this is the best they can do. I'm not saying that they can't get better. But why is it that now your own politician and they insult pass, and you go to join them, they insult? Meanwhile, your politician, they do something for you, where their own people know they do for them all. God bless you. So you have this thing where you have your government. Again, our governors are not perfect. Oh boy, they have so much to do. But you, wait they tell me, say, make I insult my governor. What do your own governor don't do for you for your own house? Maybe the same place where they sell 500, they share 500 and kerosene. Person go give birth to Pekin, they'll give her 500 naira. Meanwhile, that same period, you go to Ondo State, you have mother and child, Dr. Olusegun Mimiko, where everything was free, and people would travel even from some other places to come and enjoy that thing in the southwest in Ondo State. But no, you are very. I don't take shit from any governor. I don't take shit from any. We're speaking English. You will now insult your governors with the person where they give 500 naira for a house. But no, you are the sophisticated. You are the tribalized. If anybody ever calls you the tribalized, just know they're telling you are a fool. For everybody to come and take whatever they want. Again, I'm not saying don't come into my space. I'm telling you there are limits in my space. And by the way, the person was telling you, open your door, want to enter, we must enter. I'm like, wait, oh, guy, I don't open the front door. I don't let you in. You're in the living room. Say, no, open the bedroom. We must enter. We don't want Nigeria. That person has a tall gate in front of his own house. You can't be dumb, oh, Yoruba people. I'm not saying don't criticize your leaders. Criticize them. Call them out. See what's happening in Korodu? We talked about it. Everywhere is flooded. We can do better. Yes, there's construction going on, but this is not how it should be. I mean, constructively criticize them, call them out. But not be me go follow you. They criticize my governor. Wait, yes, it's not perfect, though, but on a scale of whatever to whatever, more compare in this matter, more compare. The one you are shielding, if you just mention before you say OT, what do? You are kilo say one Julius Berger, I mean. Celebrate your governors. If you are from the east, north, south, west, call them out, but don't bring your big mouth to be insulting political leaders, religious leaders, business leaders. As long as they're Yoruba, they must be insulted. No. That's not happening again. Which is, although I don't like the extreme that people go, what they are doing right now is that they will just take their own leaders too. The worst of them is not insulted by them, but the best of yours is brought down. Why, as a Yoruba person, do you think that makes sense? The worst of yours is celebrated. The best of mine is denigrated. Why? Because we're one Nigeria. You are dumb. No, it's not going to work. I'm not even telling you to help me celebrate my own. Don't worry about it. Just leave him like that. Leave him like that. Celebrate your own. Worst, best, whatever you want is okay, but don't cover your own shame in your terrible, very deplorable condition, and then come here and tell me to shame the people who are actually doing things well, even though they have a lot more to do. And yes, our politicians need to do a lot more work. We have a lot of work to do, especially in agriculture, in mining, in education, in health. There is a lot to do. In tourism, there's a lot to do. But guess what? Nobody will call me beat my people. So again, what I'm saying is that this thing, it did not start now. It says outstanding Yoruba public men were called imperialist stooges and Uncle Toms. And if they ever made any mistake, they will blow it out of proportion. The world must know that the Yoruba man did this. All right. So it says here, whenever a Yoruba name was mentioned in the pilot in connection with a trial or conviction for a crime, meticulous care was taken to indicate the tribe of the accused or convicted person. So to be Wale She, they write Wale in brackets Yoruba. People must know. And if the name happens to be Ogogo or Ogene, or Osamu you have to write it in front of it. Edo. You know why? Because Osamu Diame sound like Chineke or Chinedu. May not go be like say this Yoruba people you just keep any name when don't sound like Yoruba, but when it be from the north, it must be Igbo. So let's make it very clear that they are not Igbo. So they write Edo, Ijo, Urobo, anything that Isoko, they will write it there. But if an Igbo person does something, the pilots would not report it. But guess what? This is a Pan-African. Not many people then and now could differentiate an Igbo name from an Edo name or Ijo name, for instance. So in order to make assurance doubly sure that the reading public were not misled into thinking that an Igbo man had been mixed up in any reported ugly business, a non-Yoruba name was invariably correctly identified by its tribal origin. The examples given in this chapter are only a small fraction of such like numerous acts perpetrated by Dr. Azikiwe. A stage was reached when even his apologists felt very strongly that for over 2 years past, Dr. Azikiwe had been consistently conducting himself in a manner which was not only anti-party and contrary to the noble ideas of the movement, but also un-nationalist, tribalistic, and egocentric. Accordingly, at a meeting of the Central Executive Committee held in September 1940, a decision was taken that a letter should be addressed to Dr. Azikiwe inviting him to appear before the next meeting of the Central Executive Committee, fixed for Monday, 7 October 1940, to show why his membership of the movement should not be determined. All right, thank you very much for listening to that. That's how Azikiwe sparked tribal politics in Nigeria. I'm about to go into how he was invited, right, to a panel of the Nigerian youth movement where he was questioned, and that was in 1940. I hope you've learned one thing or the other. Here's the point. The point is that oftentimes Yoruba leaders, Yoruba elders have been denigrated by different people in Nigeria, particularly from the Southeast. And every single thing they accuse these elders of doing is actually what they and theirs have done or are still doing. Like I said, we don't have perfect leaders. I'll be the last person to tell you that, oh, our leaders are perfect, oh, the Yoruba people are great, nothing is missing. No, we have a lot, we also have a lot of work to do. However, people whose leaders can't even lace the shoes of your leaders, right, tell you all the evil things about your folks, and then you go all over the place insulting them, and in the name of we're all one Nigeria, we're speaking truth to power. Well, there's power where they come from, and they speak truth to that power as well. And also, this rewriting of the history, by the way, it started long before now. If you read the book by Zeke that he published in 1970, and I read it yesterday, where he said that the NCNC was under the impression that they had won the election. I've never heard a politician use that kind of statement in my life. How on earth would you be under an impression that you won an election? You either know you won or you don't know. But Zeke used impression to tell the entire world that somehow, because they were under the impression that they won and they did not win, they were expecting to have 43 seats, but they got 23. Therefore, the reason that happened was because our law was tribalistic and they used tribalism against them. It's a shame, the kind of nonsense that has gone on for a very long time. And it's very, very important that we begin to speak up about these things, particularly because, and I've said this several times, if your people succeed in destroying your leaders, you are done for because you have nobody to look up to, especially when the people we're talking about are good ones. And I'm not here to tell you about what makes another person bad, but I'm just glad to be Yoruba. And there's a book I want to recommend. Maybe one of these days we're going to go back to that book, but there's a video we did on, and we used that book a while back. The book is called The Political Philosophy of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. That was fast. The Political Philosophy of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The author is Adegunle Olayiwola Adegunle. It's a fantastic book that gave us exactly what happened in the 1951 election. And that's not the only book, by the way, but read that one and then read Azikiwe's own book, My Odyssey. And you see how, and then there's another book as well, interestingly, The Rebirth of a Nation by Kingsley Mbadiwe. You put those things together and you see the shame that people have been celebrating in the name of leaders. You are calling someone tribalist because you were under the impression that you won an election that you did not even plan for. And you're saying those people were supposed to be your members and sympathizers and supporters. Since when do you bank on sympathizers and supporters to win an election? Not in terms of them supporting you, but as folks who are going, like spending their own money and going as independent candidates. They should be automatically yours because of what? Because we're all on Nigeria. This is kind of nonsense that we fed with in this country. And we don't speak because everyone wants to claim that we are one Nigeria, we are united. Unity based on falsehood is not unity. If you're going to unite, that's to be based on truth, that's to be based on facts, not based on emotions that people are pandering. Those who should be apologizing to you and your forebears. You now have to be, tiptoeing around them because you don't want to offend. I don't say this because I want to offend, but I don't care if I offend anybody. And the truth is that offense on its own is one thing to, in fact, that's not even the right way to say it. The point is, I'm not doing this to offend anybody, but I don't care if you take offense. That's the right way.
I don't do this to offend anyone, but I don't care if somebody decides to take offense because offense is there for the taking. You're the one who wants to take it. I'm not even giving it. You can manufacture it yourself and pick it out of that thing. Anybody can be offended by anything. You can say the truth and somebody will feel offended. That doesn't really matter anymore, because we spent so many years just trying to be good people, great nation. Especially, and the crazy part is that it's not even worth it.
Sorry about the audio thing. Now the issue is I don't know where. I don't know what's the last thing you heard me say. Anyway, what I was saying is that we got to a point in Nigeria where we can't just move based on or don't say anything because that person is going to feel offended. And what I was saying, I don't know if you heard that before the mic went off. The point is we don't do this to offend anyone, right? Personally, I don't do this to offend anybody, but I don't care if people take offenses. I don't care if you take an offense because anybody can take it. Offense is there for the taking. If you want to take it, that's fine. But to say that I shouldn't speak because you're going to feel offended is nonsense. That's just blackmail. Okay? But we have to set the record straight with respect, with love, but with candor. And if a person feels offended by that, then let them feel offended. I don't really care. What we've done in Nigeria over the years is to hide the truth in the name of unity. And you cannot build a country. You can't have unity based on falsehood. The truth should be exposed. But of course, like I always say, it's not weaponized. I don't think it's productive to weaponize history. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life, and then my children as well, and their own children will spend all their lives kowtowing and apologizing to people who should be apologizing to us and our descendants forever. All because we don't know what the truth is and we don't want to talk about it because we want to have a quote-unquote united Nigeria. United Nigeria must be built on truth and facts. And anybody has a problem with that, that is entirely your business. All right. Our leaders are not perfect. Awolowo is heads and shoulders above all this. I don't even think he had any peers in this country. And that's why he's been attacked. And that's why you see books written about him trying to pull him down. Because it's clear, if you can put such a figure down, then there's no future for the entire Yoruba race as far as politics is concerned. And that's why we have to boldly reclaim him, warts and all. Even if he has any issues, it's our own. And by the way, compared to all the people that came around this time, in fact, it's incomparable. And so I'm not going to throw that person away and then embrace the one that you call King of Africa with all the terrible things that he did because we are all one Nigeria. That's not going to happen. We know what really happened, and we're going to learn history together. They say history is back in Nigeria's schools, Abi? But we didn't learn history all this well, so we're going to learn together, and hopefully we can build a great nation devoid of rancor, hopefully. Anyway, that's that about that. How Azikiwe sparked tribal politics in Nigeria. We're going to have another session tomorrow. Sorry about that. This thing keeps going in and out. All right, we're going to be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time, and tomorrow, I think there's another matter arising. So I did a video, or we had a session. I don't know if you remember. We had a session where we talked about filmmaking and theater and stuff like that. And I mentioned something about the evolution of modern theater in Nigeria. That modern theater in Nigeria actually started in the church. And some lunatic went on social media and just wrote things about it. And I think it's important to respond to the person, not to the person, but to the claim. Because, again, one of the reasons I read when I come out here is so that it doesn't look like one is making things up. So what I'm going to do is tomorrow there's a book, that I'm going to bring to the live session. We're going to read that book together, and we're going to try and understand how church connects with theater in Nigeria, especially for Yoruba people, and also how the rituals and traditional religion also connects with theater for Yoruba people. One of the problems I've noticed in recent times is that many young people cannot think critically, and they're not able to hold two differing opinions in their minds at the same time, and it's a shame. And it's also a shame that many of them are also Yoruba. In other words, it's either this or that. They cannot think of two, three, four things happening at the same time. They cannot compartmentalize, and that's why they're always fighting over nonsense on social media. So tomorrow we're going to read some of those books together, and then you're going to also hear the names of people that are doing those things, so that way you understand the fact that we speak because we know what we're saying, but beyond that, it's also important to know that we speak based on the authority based on my authority as a person and authorities of others who have gone ahead of us. And thankfully, we have the books to share and to read together. So we'll do that tomorrow, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. I want to thank everybody who has, listened, whether you're on Facebook, on YouTube, and here on TikTok. Thanks for power tapping and for liking the live and for sharing as well. I see the numbers are up on YouTube. That's actually quite nice. We're going to make it better tomorrow. If you'd like to support us, please use the bank details on the screen. It's a GT account, and your support will be highly appreciated. We're going to see again tomorrow. We're going to continue with Matters Arising, and then we'll link it with the series we started, which is the evolution of Christianity in Yoruba land. But I don't want to go straight to that. We're just going to use that theater thing to get into it, and hopefully we'll all learn together. So that'll be 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Before we leave today, we're going to play the anthems. We always play our Nigerian anthem. If you know the song, please sing along. If you know the lyrics, please learn and be a patriotic citizen. All right. I don't see any questions in the comment section. If I see anyone, I'm going to respond. By the way, I see some very nice comments on YouTube and also on TikTok, but they're very straight to the point. They're not questions. That's why I'm not reading them out. But thank you very much for engaging and for having those things right there in the comment sections across different platforms. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to have the anthems now, and then we'll call it a day. Thank you for being here. Here's the Nigerian anthem. Enjoy.
ní ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògùn adúláwọ̀ ìmọ́lẹ̀ wọ̀ ní òyìnbó nígbàjẹ́.
Àwa ní ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògùn adúláwọ̀ ìmọ́lẹ̀ wọ̀ ní wọ́pùn lágbára Ọlọ́run. Ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́. Thank you very much for a fantastic session today. We're going to have a great time together tomorrow, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Thank you very much, Mr. Akadol. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Whitey Kubo. Thank you, Lola, Mark Blades. Thank you, everyone. I see some comments now. Miss Mosun, thank you very much for being here. Oduankala, thanks everyone. It's been nice hanging out with you. We'll see you again tomorrow, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Have a lovely evening. By the way, we start the music before 4, and so a few minutes after 4, we'll be able to link other people on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Odaro, Eshel. Bye-bye.